in just a moment.
So we still see the control shell here from Jacob with the 2 main deck copies of End Hostilities, which at this point is just, I guess, standard operating procedure. But Sylvan Caryatid in the list, which is a card a lot of people have cut.
Matthew Tatar has chimed in on Twitter saying that perhaps the Cleveland logo should be a picture of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's pretty good.
Boom.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a fine choice.
Still not sure why that's in Cleveland, but we need something. So
I'm sure there was some super corrupt deal involved, where the site ultimately, that's where these things get determined. It's just something corrupt between some very wealthy businessman and the local government.
It just can't be honest work?
No.
No.
Oh, no. No.
We will find out who is on the play here in just a moment.
Because Cleveland, I'm sure, has its share of rock bands, but it's not a particularly iconic American music city, right? When I think of American music, Detroit definitely comes to mind. New York City comes to mind. Philadelphia.
Austin,
Texas.
Yeah. It's either Memphis or Nashville. I think it's
Memphis.
It's Memphis.
Fine
Okay.
choice. Nashville, definitely Nashville.
Yeah.
If you're into country music, for sure. Cleveland, not very high on the list, so I imagined it was something really corrupt.
It's a Temple of Enlightenment. Joking up with the top card to the bottom, and we are underway here in round number 7 between Geeo and Lossett. Lossett immediately knows what he's up against thanks to that Sansep Citadel. It's Abzan of some variety. And of course, can't be the aggressive version of Abzan. In fact, we haven't actually seen it all today.
No, it's surprising. I mean, we have seen some Warden of the First Trees, but that's been actually an Anaya shell, not an Abzan shell.
Windswept Thief will search up Forest. We'll see if Geeo does have return number 2. Now, he is playing 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid. He's not the build that has cut those and is playing main deck copies of Hostilities. That build has been very popular so far this weekend from what we've watched and what Nick Miller has told us. See a Siege Rhino in hand for Jacob. He's just going to play a Caryatid, maybe ramp towards that Rhino as Joe will draw a card. It's a copy of Flooded Strand. Now, of course, when you're splashing red into the heroic deck, you do pay some costs. You have to play a card like Mystic Monastery, Manic Influence, Temple of Triumph, too.
Yeah, Battlefield Forge, the mana does get a little bit worse. Not necessarily from your ability to cast the spells reliably, because these mana fixers are replacing other blue-white mana fixers, but in terms of the damage you take, whether or not the lands come into play tapped or not, you do pay costs there.
Hero of Iroas does come down for Lossett, and after he gives his deck a healthy shuffle from that Flooded Strand, we will head back Jacob's way. You see Jacob's hand, he does have that Siege Rhino I mentioned. Temple of Silence looks to be the land he'll be playing. Has a Hero's Downfall and a Bile Blight, too. So quality opening hand here for the Abzan mid-range player.
And very important for him to stick his removal while Joe is tapped out, even if that means giving up some of his development. Don't want the set down tap with God's Willing at the ready. Better off just, even if it's a little awkward, even if it's not totally efficient, just taking care of things as they show up.
There is the Temple. Top card will go to the bottom. And now there is Bile Blight. So Hero of Iroas will bite the dust, and we're going to head back Lossett's way. Lossett will draw a copy of Ordeal of Thassa. The big question, of course, is does he have a follow-up creature to play? He'll start with the Temple of Triumph. Manic Influence is going to the bottom very quickly. And it looks like he does in favored Hobblade. So back Jacob's way we go. He'll take a draw. Copy of Sylvan Caryatid.
I mean, Jacob's hand here is about as good as a game 1 hand gets in this matchup. Just so much removal and 1 threat to wrap it all up with.
He's got a healthy clock there in the Rhino. Just depends on when he wants to deploy it. He'll start with the Citadel. There is the Rhino. So Jacob's going to go up to 22. Lossett's going to go down to 16. And now Joe's got to play catch-up.
And I really like that play a lot from Jacob because it means that he can play the Murderous Cut / Hero's Downfall and Bile Blight all in the same turn. He wants to play 2 spells at once so he doesn't get tripped up by a single copy of God's Willing. So spend this turn playing the Rhino, and then the following turn when you have all of your mana available, you can use multiple removal spells to try to play over the top of Joe even if he has some sort of response.
Well, Joe's got some serious thinking to do now. Does have land number 4 and Flooded Strand in his hand. Again, we know about the Ordeal. He's going to start by sacrificing the Flooded Strand, going down to 15. Looks like he's going to get himself an island. Lossett wants to follow things up here because he's under some pressure now.
Yeah. He does have 2 copies of Valorous Stance as an addition to this deck. Before game 1, they really just couldn't get a Siege Rhino off the table. Now at least they have something.
And Stance was awesome for Joe when we watched him earlier.
Both sides. One killed a Rhino and the other one kept a creature alive through an end hostilities.
He might have Stance in his hand right now for that Rhino. He's going to go with an Ordeal, however. That'll trigger Heroic. Throw the favorite Hoplite. And now it's Teamer Battle Rage. Jacob wants to take a look, and we can do the same. Teamer Battle Rage is really what he's splashing for in this deck.
Now, this is not a bad turn from Joe, but I think the problem is he's probably going to be tapped out facing a hand with multiple removal spells. Not where Joe wants to be.
But it's worth it for the 2 cards, he's decided. He also gets through a lot of damage here, too. Creature has double strike.
Yep. I think this turn is fine for Joe. It's just, again, Jacob's hand's so good that Joe's likely to get punished big time for this.
Shields are down. We're going back to Geo's way. Corsair of Crewfix.
Rondre Price, if you were in the room, the Modern Challenge
You see
is
the
ready.
hand here
Your
for
next round is
Jacob.
ready for you.
Got the downfall at the ready.
Price, if you
Tassiger.
were in the room, your next round is ready.
Another
The
Curie
Modern
added and a
Challenge.
Corsair.
Please make your way to your seat.
Just got to get these things off the table when they're tapped out.
Yeah, again, not messing around, and no reason to do so.
Here comes the Rhino. Now there's the Curie added. Now, oddly enough, I was taking a look at Jacob's deck list here, and I saw 4/7 Curie added, so I assumed no end hostilities, but he has 2 main deck copies.
This is really weird to me. I mean, the old-time Magic player in me is looking at deck lists that have 14 creatures, some of which are just mana creatures, and 2 main deck Wrath of God effects, and it's tough to get used to. But this deck is all about just a lot of raw power card for card, and end hostilities certainly qualifies as that.
And there is another favorite Hoplite. It's time for Joe to rebuild things, or at least try to. There's Battlewise Hoplite. Mystic Monastery. Pass the turn back with God's Willing at the ready. Geeo quickly untaps. It's time to draw a card. Santep Citadel, not exactly what the doctor ordered. But he's still got a healthy clock out there. Can deploy a Tasker.
On top of that, I mean, his graveyard's already pretty potent for a Tassiger.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is how do you play with Tasker in this situation? Because he has the ability to play Corsair and Tasker in the same turn, but you have to delve his entire graveyard away.
I think that his graveyard's good enough that I wouldn't want to do that, I feel like.
He's going to lead with Corsair. Llanowar Waste on top of the deck.
So this actually is kind of the best of both worlds, as he gets to cast the Tasker and leave 1 card in the graveyard, probably the downfall, and make his Tasker activations all the more potent.
There's 4 mana. Tasker's going to come to play. And you called it. Hero's Novel will be left in the bin.
Yeah, Jacob went for max greed that turn, and with an untapped land on top of his deck, it really worked out.
Settle draw. He's at 7.
Players in Commander Pod number 6.
Geeo at 15.
Please report to the side event scorekeeper. Players in Commander Pod number 6, your pod is ready to start.
So it's got some serious ground to make up here. Now he does have Monastery Mentor in hand, and that's a card that can maybe turn the game around. Joe playing 2 copies of that main deck this weekend. Not a card we've seen a ton of yet in Standard. I know players have been trying to figure out the best home for that incredibly powerful card, but they haven't found it just yet.
It's an odd selection in this deck. It still may be good because there's a lot of spells to trigger prowess, but it is a little awkward in a deck that's all about loading up one big thing that your opponent can't interact with. What's the value of having some leftover tokens? I'm not sure it's that high.
Well, there is the Mentor. They might have a monk token on the way right now. This is Valorous Stance. That's going to take care of Tassiger. Now here comes a monk token. Joe opting to take care of Tassiger instead of Siege Rhino. Feels like he needs to get that off of the table.
Well, Siege Rhino's already done most of its damage.
Yeah.
It's in play. Tassiger sticking around is really dangerous.
Corsair the draw, Citadel on top of the deck. There's Courser. Here's Citadel. 2 triggers will bring Geeo up to 17. Take a look at the top card. Oh boy.
And that card, game 1 against Heroic, is the lock.
That is Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and that's the draw step next turn for Jacob. It's a 1 of in his deck, and it's timely right now.
Game in the post-board games, we'll get into that. Joe gets access to some counter spells, but a resolved Ugin is this deck basically can't function. It exiles, so your protection effects don't work. And you can see Joe's board. You know, next turn Jacob's gonna be able to do it for 3, leave himself with a Siege Rhino, and Joe with no board.
Well, Joe, just a God's willing. He's gonna need one heck of a draw step here. 17-7 and facing down an Ugin. He'll take a draw.
And the problem is that Joe can't even do a Desperation Alpha Strike. Jacob's light total is so high, and he's got extraneous blockers that he's probably just going to sweep away next turn anyway.
That cards that he's happy to block with.
Yeah.
Once again, Legacy Challenge. Your pairings are up. The round has started.
I mean, it's 8 mana, so it should be good, but Ugin is a disaster for this deck.
Yeah, it really, really is. Joe gonna play a Defiant Strike. Targeting Battle-Wise Hoplite. Now, there will be a couple triggers that go on here. Some prowess action, some heroic action. You see Joe getting the dice ready. Defiant Strike in combination with Monastery Mentor can cause for a very explosive turn. Joe scribes the top card to the bottom. Now Strike will resolve, which means he gets to draw a card.
Even if he was able to set up something with Teamer Battle Rage, I still think he would be likely short of lethal this turn.
Flooded Strand is the draw. Yeah, well, he's going to try to attack for as much as he can, hoping that Geeo makes some sort of mistake.
Well, he only has exactly 8 mana next turn on the board. So if Caryatid gets involved in combat and dies, there's some hope from Joe's side that maybe he can't cast Ugin next turn.
Yeah.
It's a long shot, but it is not impossible.
Well, there are the blocks. Courser's going to get in front of the Monk Maker and Monastery Mentor. Favorite Hoplite, bites the dust of Siege Rhino, and Battle-Wise Hoplite. Comes right into the Courser. That Courser is going to die. 4 damage being dealt. See Joe kind of showing it to him. Defiant Strike, +2/+2. And then the Heroic. It's a base 2/2.
Not that it matters all that much in this scheme of things because
Ugin's the draw step.
yes.
Yeah. Case of Coilo is going to come into play. That's an untapped plan here for Jacob. Not that he needed one, but it certainly doesn't hurt. He's up to 16. Top card there, Caves. There is Ugin. And Joe was hoping he wouldn't cast it. He did. And I think he knows that he's beat. Yeah, and he's going to pick them all up here. So Jacob Geeo is going to win game number 1 here with Joe Lossett. Abzan mid-range, up a game over Jeskai Heroic. All it takes is 1 Ugin.
And there's only 1 Ugin in the main deck. The perfect number.
That's just good deck building.
That's perfect deck building.
We'll take a look at the sideboard here. We're going to start with Joe. What are the 15 he has?
2 copies of Laguna Bond Trailblazer, an Ordeal of Heliod, 3, Glare of Heresy, 2 Erase, a Treasure Cruise, 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 3 Stubborn Denials. Huge fan of the counter spells in this matchup. They're really, really powerful against expensive spells, which are a lot of where Jacob's power comes from here in the Disdainful Strokes and the Stubborn Denial. The second copy of Treasure Cruise I'd like bringing in here. I can see the Trailblazers and the Glares potentially coming in as well. If Joe wants a threat here that can sustain through Bioblight and Drown in Sorrow early in the game.
You mentioned Drown in Sorrow. Jacob's got 3 of those in his board. A Garrick Apex Predator, 3 copies of Glare of Heresy, a Liliana Vest, 3 Read the Bones, and End Hostilities to go along with the 2 he has in the main deck. 2 Thoughtseize and a Back to Nature. This seems tough.
It's a lot. I like the 2 Thoughtseizes, the End Hostilities, the 3 copies of Glare of Heresy, the 3 Drowned Sorrows. Drowned Sorrow actually isn't great on the draw a good percentage of the time, but it's still worth having.
Some really, really good options here for Jacob, though. This is going to be, I think, a pretty tough one here for Joe. He's going to have to get off to a really fast start, like we saw in his previous match against Opson. I think that's what it's going to take. So both these players are going to get ready and sideboard here. We're going to talk about SCG Game Night with our friendly little wolf, Mittens is his name?
Mittens.
Mittens is his name every week here in February.
Anyhow, this is the kit for February. You can get signed up over at starcitygames.com/game night, though too late to get signed up for the February kit. Every month we send a new token and new foil pins as well. And you can set this up for any day of the week that you would like. You can set it up as sanctioned or unsanctioned, whatever format you want. Just get players in your store for some fun and friendly magic, whatever night of the week. starcitygames.com/game night for more information. Get yourself signed up as soon as possible for the March kit.
We'll have them every month. New stuff, new tokens, new pins. It used to be every Wednesday. Now it's any day of the week you want to. And in February, which is coming to a close pretty quickly here, oddly enough, we've only got about 2 weeks left in February.
It's halfway point.
Yeah, scary, actually, how fast this month went.
Yeah, at the Open in Baltimore, Saturday will be February the 28th, and then the Sunday will be March 1.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Goes fast, man.
I won't be there.
That's right.
Matthias. I'll be at my brother's wedding in Mexico, but I'll be flying home that Monday, March 2nd, which is my birthday.
Oh, that's exciting.
Isn't it? Get to spend it in a jet. That's really exciting.
I get to do the same thing this year.
Where are you going to be going?
The Open in Atlanta, assuming that I'm working that one, which I assume that I will.
Okay, fair enough. Not bad. Birthdays and airplanes.
Not bad.
Do they do anything special for that? Is that like a guaranteed for, like if, you go to a restaurant, you show your ID, it's like, all right, here's a free sundae. Do I get a free first class upgrade?
I doubt it.
Do I get free cookies that
Doubt
are
it.
already free? No, I don't get those. A free glass of wine?
Doubt it.
They are stingy. Maybe a free soft drink.
Yeah, second bag of peanuts, perhaps.
Oof. So, 2 things. 1, Alan Freed invented the term rock and roll. He was a famous DJ for a Cleveland radio station.
Okay.
So apparently that's how we have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I think that it's still probably some super corrupt land deal that took place. I think that's a reasonable excuse. That's a totally fine reason, but
Number 2, how far do you think you can push the airline people to give you things? Because I'm under the belief that they can't say no.
I think that you can really leverage that. The only thing that stops most people is a sense of human decency.
Okay.
And that really isn't a factor for a lot of people that I've encountered on airplanes.
So let's say, for example, they say, would you like peanuts, pretzels, or cookies? If I say I'd like 5 of each, what do?
They probably would give it to you, I think. If you said I want 5 of each, I think they'd probably hook you up.
Right? Because, for example, when I'm on a plane, I only get a glass of cranberry juice. And if I say I want the can, they don't even bat an eye. They just give you the can, they give you a cup of ice. Done. Next customer.
Right, because part of it is like they want to make their own lives easier. They're not really concerned with protecting Delta's stash of peanuts and pretzels. Whatever makes their own life more convenient is how it's gonna end up going down. You've worked some jobs like that where you didn't really care too much about what was going on with the company, or the assets you were entrusted with protecting were pretty cheap on the balance. You knew it didn't really matter at the end of the day if you gave out 1 bag of pretzels or 3 bags of pretzels.
Sure.
So yeah, I think you can just jam them. As long as you don't ask for all of them, I think you can get away with basically anything.
This could make for a very interesting thought experiment.
Yeah.
What can I get you to drink? A Sprite, a Coke, a ginger ale.
Right.
All 3. Let's go. Cans, all of them. I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but I'm saying someone should and report back.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying.
We have people I think we could task with this. The right mentality.
Joe Lossett does start things off with a flooded strand while Jacob is resolving his scry with the Temple of Malady. Joe very quickly sacrifices the strand. Either an island or a plains on the way, and it will be an island here for Joe. Not a great hand here for Jacob. Looks a little land heavy. Does have an Obzon Charm, a couple of Windswept Heath, excuse me, a Temple of Silence, a Plains, and a Siege Rhino.
Not a very good hand.
No.
And not a very good hand for this matchup.
Maybe relying on the scry from his temples to get the job done. Though Joe's going to try to put him underneath a lot of pressure. He'll start off with the Battle-Wise Hoplite. Jacob will take a draw. It's a copy of Tassiger. There's a temple. Now, it does look like there's a Hero's Downfall hanging out there as well, so that does change things a little bit.
That's a very solid hand there. There's a downfall as well.
Joe will take a draw. Picked up a copy of Defiant Strike. See how he wants to start. Oftentimes when he's playing this deck, he starts with the Defiant Strike, scries, draws his card, then reassesses the situation.
And a big part of this is he wants to just get in while the getting's good. This is a spell that can get fizzled by removal spells in response, so when you have an opportunity to take advantage of your opponent not being able to interact, you just want to cast it.
Top card goes to the bottom from the scry. Joe draws a card copy of Feat of Resistance. That's a big one. Here's an attack for 4.
Now he's got his protection.
Yep.
Attention players, we are closing
Joe's build of the deck displaying 1 Feat of Resistance, 4 God's Willing, and then 2 copies of Valorous Stance as far as protection is concerned.
And here's the problem with Drown in Sorrow. Early on in the game, it can be really good, especially when you're on the play. On the draw, often doesn't do very much.
You called it hot and cold
Yes.
the last time, and I think that's a great way to describe it. Sometimes it's an A+, sometimes it's an F-.
Right. Sometimes Joe has a draw of turn 1 creature, turn 2 creature, and then Drown in Sorrow is great when you're on the play. Or you get in spots like this where Joe has a 3/3 in play, and that's it. And your Drown in Sorrow is worth very little.
Jacob not willing to make a move here at all. Not going to cast Hero's Downfall on this board. And Joe says, I'm not going to do anything either. So Jacob going to sacrifice a Windswept Heath. He's down at 12. And he'll get himself a forest. Now it's a little game of cat and mouse, but Joe's the one with the threat in play.
Yep. And all the pressure's on Jacob here to play really, really well. Because if you ever time things incorrectly, you don't get a chance to catch back up in this matchup.
Abzan Charm going after Battle-Wise Hoplite. Lossett with Feat of Resistance, which means that'll trigger Heroic. It'll also get a counter due to Feat of Resistance just giving it a counter, so it's going to grow larger. And he also gets a scry. Joe with a Disdainful Stroke at the ready as well in his hand. Going to leave that card on top. Feat of Resistance resolves. Battle-Wise Hoplite is now 5/5. Glare of Heresy to draw. That's not so bad.
It still doesn't allow Jacob to cast 2 removal spells in 1 turn. It's possible you'll see him, in fact, cast the Siege Rhino this turn to set up a turn 5 of Glare plus Hero's Downfall.
He's moved the Rhino to the front of his hand. So it seems as though he's leaning that way. Because by not playing the Rhino this turn and just casting 1 removal spell, he's playing off curve.
Exactly. Next turn, he's in a spot where he can only cast 1 spell again.
Another card he could cast this turn is Tassiger, but that's not all that great on this board.
It's a little on the slow side. I think that he would prefer to say Tassiger for a spot where he's already cast some spells, he's used some of his fetch lands and so forth, and Tassiger is 1 or 2 mana to cast.
Well, there's the Rhino, and Joe cannot Disdainful Stroke that fast enough, so to the graveyard that'll go. Geeo at 12. Lossett perhaps with a Defiant Strike yet again? Yes. Trigger Heroic. Time to scry. Temple of Enlightenment. Can't go to the bottom fast enough. Defiant Strike resolves. Draw a card. Flooded Strand. Not exactly what the doctor ordered. Joe flooding out here a little bit.
Yep. And so as bad as this is going for Jacob, he still has a chance to catch back up with his removal spells next turn.
There's the Strand. The attack has already occurred. Geo's down to 5. Hero's Downfall to draw. Geo will play a Windswept Heath. Gonna lead out with Glare of Heresy. Joe staring at a Valorous Stance, excuse me.
No protection there.
Nope. Jacob actually has the opportunity now to either leave Hero's Downfall up or just slam a Tasker on the table. Gonna sacrifice a fetch land. It's a pretty good turn for Jacob.
Yep. I mean, there's no guarantee that he can get that threat off the table going into that turn. Joe can easily have a hand of, you know, a stubborn denial and a valorous stance for the hero's downfall, and then nothing works.
There's Tassiger. So this one will cost 3. Just got to figure out which 3 cards he wants to delve. Actually going to make it cost 4 now. So just going to leave Glare of Heresy down there.
Yeah, I like that play a lot. If Jacob has to use Tassiger, it's likely to find a removal spell. So I like leaving just the Glare and getting rid of the Rhino.
Manic Influence will come down here for Lossett. There's Monastery Mentor. Joe will pass the turn back. Valor stance at the ready. Drown and Sorrow the draw. Drown and Sorrow turning back into an A+ now.
Yep. And Jacob has just drawn so much removal. He's also done a very good job of measuring his answers, I feel like.
I think he's been timely with everything he's done. There's Drown and Sorrow. Get a little bit creative here if you'd like. So Joe's able to actually use Valor Stance quite well here. He used that to take out Tassiger. As Drown and Sorrow is not resolved yet. Now the Monk will come into play. And now Drown and Sorrow resolves. The Monk will die. But Monastery Mentor stays alive.
Yeah, that was a really, really good turn there from Joe. And he can win the game in this spot with the right draw.
Yep. Let's see if he finds it. That's the right draw.
Yep.
That's an Ordeal Thassa. Trigger Prowess. So Joe's going to play this. Trigger Prowess. Gets a Monk. And now he gets to come in. Ordeal gives you a counter. That's exactly 4. And Jacob wasn't able to play 2 spells in 1 turn. And assuming our light totals are correct here, Jacob is at 4. He's taking 4, and that is going to do it. So Joe Lossett with a timely top deck and some nice play, able to win game number 2 here against Jacob Geeo, and we're going to play a 3rd one.
I think that a lot of players in that position that Joe was just in would have had the instinct of just, I'll Valorous Stance your Tassiger before you get to your turn because I don't want you to activate it. But Joe was aware of the fact that Jacob could cast Drown in Sorrow, in which case it's insane for me to hold the Valorous Stance up. And even if Jacob just says go, I'm probably better served just sitting on this Valorous Stance either to protect my own creature or to do something about Tassiger when Jacob taps out, rather than preempt the whole thing. So I think that's a spot where a lot of players would have lost that game just by casting Valorous Stance on Tassiger before Jacob untapped. Joe was patient and won game 2 as a result.
And that's a display of Drown and Sorrow being just a mediocre card in the matchup.
It's a lot different on the play, and we might get an opportunity to see that here, because what happens a lot when the Absalom player is on the play is Joe just casts a turn 2 creature. Jacob can untap and Drown Sorrow it away, and then it's a pretty good card. But it does have spots of being quite bad, and you definitely saw that game. Drown Sorrow did not do very much.
Well, game number 3 going to be underway here in just a moment. I know some people were chiming in on Twitter about your little joke towards Cleveland. I bet some people were chiming in on our chat area too, the feature match area for twitch.tv/SCG Live.
Oh, I believe it, and if you want to go in there and spit some heat, you got to subscribe, because if you're not a subscriber, you are in slow-mo chat, which means only a post every 2 minutes. For a $4.99 a month subscription, you get access to slow-mo free chat, plus custom emoticons and badges.
We've got some fantastic emoticons. Perhaps this is where we bring in the Cleveland emoticon. Bang, right here. We got me, we got you, we got Matthias, we got our Penguin, we got our Turtle. You know, we could have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for me. We could have a pile of burning trash for you. I think it could really work out really well.
Empirically, New Jersey is just the best state to live in. The logo would just be a bunch of happy, gainfully employed, well-educated people hanging out.
So the Manhattan skyline.
No, we are not. It's not the Manhattan skyline. Get out of here.
That's not what it would be.
No.
Okay.
No, it would
Either
not.
way, twitch.tv/SCG Live, custom emoticons, you can sign up today.
Empirically, the best place to live.
It's a bold claim.
No, it's not, because it's just math.
Bold claim.
It's just math.
Well, I don't believe in analytics, so
Oh, you and Charles both.
yeah, we're cut from the same cloth.
I don't care what the numbers say. I care about what I see, by which I mean what I believe that I'm seeing.
Correct. I've been in New Jersey. I know what I see and what I hear when I'm there, and there's no way that can be correct. So it just kind of is what it is.
That's called confirmation bias. We can get that into the podcast this week.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
That could be a delightful conversation. Those are some big words you just used there, so.
Only one of the words was even remotely big.
I will have to Google that. See what I'm going to Bing it.
You're going to Bing it?
I'm going to Bing it. I don't use Google. I'm gonna
Ask
Bing
my
it.
buddy Jeeves. See if he's got the info on that.
I'm going to Bing it, see what I can find out. Game number 3 here between Joe Lossett and Jacob Geeo. Jessica Heroic and Obzon mid-range.
And in fairness, when I've gone to Cleveland, I've had a really good time. We just got to give each other beats. That's all it is. It's nothing but love.
When we go there in April, I'm going to show you what it's all about, which is mediocre weather and above average food.
It's fine.
That's what it's all about,
Pretty
baby.
close to New Jersey.
Sandsep Citadel will start things off here for Jacob. Joe with the flooded strand. He's down to 19. You have to imagine Plains plus favorite hoplite is how he's going to start things off here.
Yep. Not a lot to do for a single blue in this deck, with the exception of Stubborn Denial.
Well, that is an important card after sideboard in this matchup. There is your hoplite. Elspeth the draw. A pretty good one in the matchup, but very slow. Caves of Koilos comes down. Jacob does have a copy of Glare of Heresy. He also has Bioblight in hand, too. So how you sequence these removal spells, very important.
This feels like game 2 in a sense where Jacob, it felt like had the tools to win, could never play quite efficiently enough. There were some color mana issues and so forth, but this is another great opening hand that Jacob has.
There's Bioblight. Jacob will have to pay a life to cast it, but he's going to use that here to get favorite hoplite off the table. And again, it's very interesting if he's supposed to use that or if he's supposed to use Glare of Heresy. We'll see how things unfold in this game as Lossett only has a Plains and has to pass the turn. Jacob with a basic forest. There is Courser. Take a look at the top card. Sylvan Caryatid. Pass the turn back. Joe going to play Defiant Strike. He needs a new card. We have seen this before from Joe. Another Defiant Strike. So he's in search of some help for sure. There's a Flooded Strand. Does he have a creature to play?
Yeah, it looks like a lot of spells and a lot of lands.
In the draw step, Valor's Stance is going to go after the Courser.
This card's been very impressive in white creature decks. Both modes are just so good.
Yeah.
There's no end of Siege Rhinos and Courser Crewfixes to take care of, and 2 mana to protect your own creature in a format where a lot of people play 3 mana removal spells. That's very good too.
Caryatid will come down. Geeo without a land to play. Though he does have a Temple of Silence on top of the deck. Lossett will search up an island, but he needs a creature right now. Battle-wise hoplite, Hero of Iros. Heck, even favorite hoplite. That'll work too.
But this is one of the vulnerabilities of the deck. You know, when you don't have a creature in play, the deck doesn't do anything.
And people forget, this deck only plays around 12 to 15 creatures. That's it.
Another big draw for Joe in this spot would be Treasure Cruise. I mean, his graveyard's pretty flush, and he probably has 2 copies in his deck right now. He has one in his main deck, one on the board. I imagine the second one came in.
There's the Temple. Joe will take a draw, Temple of Enlightenment. Top card, Battle-wise hoplite. Can't put that to the bottom. As much as he may want a Treasure Cruise, he needs that hoplite.
Yep, it's something to do.
Windswept Heath, the draw. That'll come in. Sacrifice very quickly, will Jacob. We might see him try to resolve an Elspeth here.
It's a very bold line of play because this is running right into a Stubborn Denial if he taps out.
Disdainful Stroke too.
Well, Disdainful Stroke is, you know, you may not be able to play around it at this stage.
Sure.
But Joe's got nothing going on. You can probably wait for 1 more mana. I don't believe Joe has Stubborn Denial, so it won't end up punishing him, but this is a very risky play from Jacob if he's tapping out for Elspeth.
Come on, players. Only need 1 more person for this Legacy Winterbox to fire and 2 more people for this Modern Winterbox to fire. If you would like to play either Legacy,
He's maybe thought better of it.
Modern
Okay.
Winterbox,
Just going to pass the turn back.
A lot of discipline there.
stage,
I thought he was going for it.
Me too.
You started. That's 1 more for Legacy and 2 more for Modern Winterbox.
Here's a Battle-Wise hot play. Now, what's interesting about this is if you're Joe, you have to imagine, okay, my opponent probably has at least 2 removal spells in hand. So how heavily am I going to try to protect my one threat?
Well, you got to use these God's Willings on something. And he also needs help regardless, so scrying with the Battle-Wise hot play is really nice.
Scrying with the God's Willing, too. So here is Hero's Downfall. That will be countered upon resolution by God's Willing.
Carl Ferguson, if you are in the room, please come
Jacob's going to have to take 1 to cast that
Carl
Hero's Downfall,
Ferguson, please come
thanks to his
support
Caves
me.
and Quelos. So players get the life totals and everything situated here. Can't cast that Abzan Charm just yet.
No.
And so he wants to have the Heroic Trigger resolve. Yeah, I see what he wants here, because when the Heroic Trigger resolves, he gets to resolve the Scry, and then God's Willing is on the stack.
Right,
So
there's
then
still
he can do it.
there's still an opportunity.
Correct. So I think that's what the conversation is the Heroic Trigger on Battle-Wise Hoplite is put a +1/+1 counter on it and Scry.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the awkwardness here. Probably the part of the Magic engine that most commonly trips up everyone is triggers occur before the spell actually happens.
Correct.
So whatever the hoplite's up to resolves, then the God's Willing says, all right, I'm about to resolve. What's going on here?
Yep.
There's an opportunity for Jacob to cast Abzan Charm if he wants to.
Now he's going to cast it. God's Willing still on the stack. So that's taken care of. There's your exchange. And now we go back Jacob's way. He'll take a draw. Copy of Urborg. His hand right now, Urborg, Elspeth, Glare.
Not a bad spot to play land number 7 and go for Elspeth.
Yeah. But he's just going to pass the turn back. Joe will draw. Feat of Resistance. All he can do is pass the turn back, no creature yet. Jacob draws. Another copy of Glare of Heresy. He's refusing to deploy that Elspeth. Teamer Battle Raise the draw. Joe will play a Mana Confluence and pass the turn back over to Jacob. Jacob's turn to draw. Temple of Malady. It's a land. Might as well be a temple. Top card goes to the bottom. Head back Joe's way. Don't see draw go happen often in this matchup, but yet here we are. Siege Rhino. That'll change some things. And Joe very quickly let that resolve.
Well, I think he wants to use Valorous Stance on this and save the Disable Stroke for a Planeswalker.
Didn't even think twice about it. Looks like players making sure the life totals are correct here in this situation.
And that reaction from Joe is really important too, because if Joe says immediately, yeah, that resolves, it may cause Jacob to conclude there's no counterspell in Joe's hand, and he may go for the Elspeth next turn.
I think that's smart. And a player of Joe's caliber has probably decided, if my opponent draws Siege Rattle, yes, that resolves. That's just what
Right.
my response will be. Here's a Temple. Ordeal of Thassa goes to the bottom. Valorous Stance, going after the Siege Rhino. That's gone. Pass the turn back. The draw is an Abzan Charm. Jacob will pass the turn back, still not letting himself run into the Disdainful Stroke. Here's Abzan Charm at the end of turn. 2 cards coming. One's a Land Over Waste, 2 is a Glare of Heresy. All 3 Glare of Heresies in hand now. Sansep Citadel.
And Jacob's waited so long on this Elspeth, I had to wonder if he just has a bunch of Thoughtseize. He's waiting to draw one to see if the coast is clear.
That's what it feels like to me. He might change gears, might be a little impatient. And I don't like this play very much because what's changed?
Exactly. I'm not a huge fan of that play for the same reason. It looked like there was a plan from Jacob's side of the table, and then he sort of decided that he was no longer interested.
Well, there's Ugin off the top of the deck. So is he going to cast this one? And he will not. So now Joe will draw.
But it's the same deal as before.
Yeah.
You know, if you thought it was good, the Elspeth was good. I'm not sure why you would think the Ugin wasn't good the following turn.
There's Glare of Heresy. Joe's going to try to protect his card.
Glare, and the feat is really nice here because the only removal in Jacob's hand is other glares, which are sorceries. So at least for one turn, Joe's going to be able to untap and attack.
And the perfect draw step here for Joe's Ordeal, Thassa.
Yeah.
Get something going.
Treasure Crew is very good as well.
Yeah, that's true. And you mentioned it, the fact that Glare is a sorcery is a really big deal. There's the land.
Yeah, the sequencing of removal is so significant against Jeskai Heroic or Blue-White Heroic, all those versions of the deck, because you just get into weird spots like this where now all of a sudden I'm locked out of playing the removal for the rest of the turn, and Joe might get to do something.
Now Jacob's cracked his windswept teeth. And that means that Hugin's coming to town.
It's time.
But Joe has the answer at the ready. He had a disdainful stroke for Elspeth, and he's got one for Hugin. We'll see if Jacob's going to cast it or not. He stopped himself previously. It looked like he was going to play an Elspeth, and he thought better of it. He's going to go with Hugin here. This is the card that Joe conceded to game one. He won't be conceding to it now. Disdainful Stroke will take care of it. He'll sacrifice a fetch land. Go down to 14, get a land out of his deck. He needs action, he needs it now. He knows that Ordeal of Thassa's is on the bottom of his deck, and that's an important draw for him.
Yeah, that's another very subtle but very sharp play from Joe. Most of the time after you scry to the bottom a couple times, you don't want to be sacking your fetch lands because you're now shuffling in your bad draws. But a lot of the stuff that Joe put to the bottom has become good all of a sudden. Ordeal of Thassa's is a really nice draw. And so even though he's scried to the bottom, he's willing to shuffle because the bad cards have suddenly become good.
Didn't even have a land to find.
For the next round.
Just would rather get in a shuffle, takes a draw step. God's Willing isn't bad. Same situation as last turn.
Exactly. Jacob might get jammed up again with only sorceries of the same color to follow up with, and Joe might get another hit. And he's got Temur Battle Rage in his hand. It doesn't take a lot to kill him from here.
Hero's Downfall the draw. That's timely.
That's a huge draw.
There's God's Willing. He's going to want to respond to this. Heroic resolves. He let the Scry resolve on that.
And that was a Heath. I mean, that was a dead draw that Joe got out of.
Now there's Hero's Downfall. Now if Joe draws something of relevance here, which he did in Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, I'd say that counts.
Just think that Heath would have been his draw step.
Yep.
If he responds accordingly. So Joe's going to go for a cruise. 3 cards coming. And he could chain off into another Treasure Cruise here. He could turn this around real quick. Disdainful Stroke, one of the cards he's found. Looks like 2 copies of Monastery Mentor as well. Now, how he plays these is interesting, simply because he saw Drown in Sorrow last game.
Bioblight as well.
Yeah. So does he want to play one? Does he want to play both? Looks like he might be leaning towards both, though. Looks like he might be slowing down a little bit, and he is. Jacob will draw. Copy of Sylvan Caryatid.
Standard challenge players, your pairings for round 2 are going
There's a
up.
glare.
Standard challenge players, your pairings for round 2
Bye-bye,
are
Mentor.
going up.
There's Caryatid, pass the turn. Joe will draw.
I mean, Joe can feel it too. He's got this turned around.
Flooded Strand wants to draw step. He's got to pass the turn back. Geeo. With the Siege Rhino. Is it time for Disdainful Stroke? There are a lot of big draws in Jacob's deck.
But getting another token into play right now and starting to attack is very nice too.
Yep. So there's Disdainful Stroke. There's your Monk token. Lossett will take a draw step. Temple of Enlightenment. Not great, but at least lets him scry. Take a look at the top card. It's a Temple of Enlightenment. Now that's the bottom card. Attackers. In we go. There's your block. Easy breezy. 1 point of damage will come across. Looking to fade some draws here is Lossett.
I mean, Jacob's got so many just monstrous draws here.
Didn't get a great look at what he picked up. He's asking Joe how many cards he has in his hand. The answer's 2. We know that neither of them are very good. One of them's a Temur Battle Rage, the other's a land. Is it a Rhino? This is 5 mana. Oh boy. And hostilities. He wants to start it over. Fair enough.
I don't blame him.
Lossett draws. Battlewise Hoplite. Try to top that.
Oh boy.
If you go into the bin, you know what that is. That can only be 1 card.
And he's moving some inefficient ones out of here. Probably looking at Tassiger.
Yeah, he's delving some stuff away here. It is Tassiger. So delve 5 of the useless ones away. Leave the rest as ammunition. Might have actually enough mana to activate that thing twice in one turn. Looks like he does. So turn over a Bile Blight and a Windswept Teeth and says, hey, give me a card.
It's all removal, siege rhinos, and planeswalkers.
For me, and I know this stinks,
Okay, finish time of the round.
I've had some interest in giving him end hostilities.
Additional turn.
If you have a
Joe probably can't weather the storm of planeswalkers or removal, so he might have to just say, all right, you get to reset it.
Yeah. No, that's what he's got to give him. Here's your Wrathback. That's super hard for me to beat. Would you like to cast it? Yeah, I think Jacob says, no. I'm at 16. I'm doing all right. There's a Temple. That card stayed on top very quickly for Joe.
Defiant Strike.
Joe passed the turn back. Tasker activation, carry added, Temple, and Joe very quickly says, take your carry added. Please keep flipping those over.
Yep. So unfortunate non-bow of the deck is Tassiger and Caryatid.
There's an attack. No blocks here. Jacob wondering how many cards he's got left in his deck. Plenty, though.
Yeah, I don't think decking is a concern here.
Tasker activation. 2 lands, which means a tough decision. Fabiano showed just how potent this card could be in Washington, D.C. during week 1. And Geo's doing it right now.
I have rarely seen the games go in such a way where Tassiger just gets to go wild with the activated power, but the card doesn't need that to be potent. It's good just as a 6-mana 4/5 with Delve. And if one game out of 10 goes like this, one game out of 15, well, that's just gravy.
Yeah, Joe's got a really hard decision to make on what to take out of the graveyard there.
This also does not look good.
There's Elspeth. Perhaps it's a card that Joe can beat. I mean, he needs to chain together something completely busted this turn, and he's got Teamer Battle Rage in his hand to possibly do it.
Well, I think that Joe's hope here was that Jacob wouldn't go for the Elspeth, because Joe's sort of saying, all right, tap out. And then if Stubborn Denial's in the mix, maybe Joe can actually untap and win the game.
I think Joe's hope here is that he does go for the Elspeth, because if he runs himself into some sort of protection effect, he can kill them all in one turn.
Yeah.
Like, he's tapped out now at this point, and I think he's hoping, God's willing, something, so I can go with the Teamer Battle Rage too. Now, he just played Defiant Strike, triggered the Scry, found Ordeal of Thassa. It's all got to happen in one turn, and it's got to be this one.
Right, but he's got a shot at it.
Yep. Especially, we can't forget the Teamer Battle Rage when you have Ferocious gives Trample.
Yeah, no, and yes, this could easily be a lethal turn.
So now here's a Scry. That card's going to go to the bottom. And you have to imagine that Jacob thinks he's playing against White Blue Heroic. I haven't really seen any red cards.
Well, the Battle Rage did come up in game 1.
Sure.
But it has to be on his radar right now.
Right now, Battle-wise, Hoplite is a 5-power creature. 2 heroic triggers, 1 from Defiant Strike. So Joe's got to work his way into some more instants here.
Well, he can't wait. The die is cast.
Now this is the turn. He says, can I attack? Joe says, I'm not attacking just yet.
And even when I do attack, I still got an opportunity to do some things.
Yep. Trigger, trigger. Ordeal. Looks like a land. Triple block is smart. There's Teamer Battle Rage. Take a look at the top card, Temple of Triumph. That becomes the bottom card. This is turn 0 of time. I don't see this match take this long often, but it's been a fun one to watch.
Yeah, this has been a really compelling game, and it's been great to watch Joe battle through wave after wave of bad scenarios, and still, he had a chance to win the game this turn. If things broke right for him, Jacob could be dead.
So this is an attack for 14 with trample, which means Jacob's going to go down to 5. Geeo going to untap. Turn 1, Abzan Charm.
And at this point, you got to feel like Joe doesn't have a protection effect. He would have killed you with it.
Yep.
So get the hoplite off the table right now.
By any means necessary. If you want to play around counter magic, that's fine, but you have the tools to get that thing off the table.
Yep.
There's Abzan Charm. That'll get that out of here. That's important. Here comes Tassiger. Lissette's down to 6. Elspeth gonna go up. Here come 3 more soldier tokens. Anything else that Jacob wants to do this turn? He's just happy to pass the turn back with some Tasker activations available. Joe gonna untap all those lands. Turn 2 of extra turns. Joe will take a draw. Mystic Monastery will come into play. There's a couple of lands. Ordeal Thassa is the last card, and that is going to do it. Jacob Geeo is going to win this match here over Joe Lossett. 2 games to 1. Abzan midrange will take care of Jeskai Heroic. Lossett picks up his first loss, and Abzan midrange moves on to 7-0.
That was